This is Real Estate Copilot. It doesn't matter if you're a client or an agent, I can help guide you through your real estate journey. Get ready for takeoff. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Real Estate Copilot. I'm your co-pilot, Josh Shives, and joining me, as always, our in-house marketing guru, Nelson Pelton.
Hey, everybody.
Hey. It's been a little bit, but we're back in the saddle and ready for takeoff, I guess. So joining us today is Mr. Lafayette Real Estate himself, Charlie Shook. He's laughing, but you can say hello.
Hey there, Josh. Nice to see you.
Yes, I've said that to him many times, so I mean, I'm serious.
No, you're very kind.
Yeah.
Coming from you, that means a lot.
Yeah. Charlie, we appreciate you being here today and talk. And, our main talking point is going to be talking about buyer broker agency, which has been around, but it just passed into state law recently and effective yesterday. So I think yesterday, yes. So that's our main talking point, but we'll go on and talk about quite a few topics here. Just to start off with, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and how long you've been in the real estate game?
I'd be glad to. But let me start out by saying congratulations on your Small Business of the Month award and maybe the Small Business of the Year award. Well deserved.
Thank you. We're, I said it at the speech, but we're just blessed to work with a great community and great people, and to be up there and recognized is just another blessing. So it's good.
We're probably going to touch on some issues in Lafayette that are not necessarily unique to us, but
Sure.
more meaningful only because we're in a very successful community. And if we were not adding new jobs, if we didn't have good government, if we didn't have those great folks in West Lafayette, the story would be completely different. We would not have a housing shortage, but we do.
We do, yeah. Everything's growing and growth is good. So
It's better than the opposite. Real estate, I've been in real estate since 1989. I grew up in a real estate family, so I kind of watched it from the dining room table, because that was back before we had cell phones, fax machines, and offers and documents were just kind of traded between front doors. So I saw a brief side of it. I came back and joined a family business, sold real estate, and I think the cool thing about being a real estate broker is you can grow whatever part of your business you want, and you can choose to participate in whatever parts of the business or the infrastructure behind the business, and we need people in each one of those locations. And Josh, I just watch you and your company taking on a lot of the very traditional, important values of a real estate brokerage company, and that's serve your community, serve your clients, take really good care of your brokers, train them, groom them, coach them, and then enjoy what happens. And then you layer on top of it the newer ideas that you bring, that I watch and try to implement. It's really just the best of both worlds.
yeah, we try to be creative. I feel like you have to be creative anymore, right? So
Yep. And this is creative.
it's part of the game.
So, Charlie, you mentioned you got into the family business in '89. What were you doing prior to real estate?
I worked for a commercial bank in Detroit Bank and Trust, now Comerica. I worked there for 10 years, and I was in commercial lending. And I had a really good job, and I really liked the company. And I happened to have a position where I reported to somebody who reported to the chairperson. Just a unique opportunity that lasts a couple of years. And when that opportunity wound down, I really needed to move into an activity where I needed more growth, more training.
Sure.
And it looked okay, but it was like paying your dues type of stuff. So I looked at what my dad did and what my boss did, and frankly, I thought our jobs looked more interesting than his. So it was
They're different every day.
very different,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
it's very people oriented. You have as much control as you want in running the business. And so instead of starting over in Detroit, I started over down here. And the way the banking world is working, the bank was sold, the culture changed, and most of my people left unhappy. I left really pleased to have been there.
Yeah, so you exited at the right time, and it's gone well for you. So I think
Lucky
so.
timing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's gone well anyways. So
It has. I still like it.
yeah, I do agree though. It's I think defining if somebody told me to write down my job description, I don't know what I would write because it changes every single day, and it's
Next Monday it might be different.
my phone rings. My main thing on my job description, I'd write that my phone rings 24/7.
Yeah, and generally the most important calls are the ones that you don't recognize.
Yeah.
Because that is probably a client that is not happy, needs attention, and the best thing you can do is to answer the phone.
Yeah, answer them and talk through, hopefully. So, yeah. I don't know. We're blessed to be in the business, so there we go. Oh, I think that I know you've sat on a few boards and committees throughout your years in real estate. Do you mind sharing what those were with us?
Yeah, I've been active in the local association and our state association, and then tangentially in the national association. And I learned I do my best work in Lafayette, and maybe at the state association. The national association is just so big and so far away from the day-to-day inspections and mutual releases that sometimes I feel like they've lost sight of that. So it's good to find what your home is. And then I've been involved, like you, in some community organizations. And it's those community organizations, the not-for-profits, the cultural, the recreational things that make the difference that government can't necessarily make.
Yeah, I agree. It takes a village, and I don't just mean that inside the business. It's the whole community, and we try our best to be a part of that whole community, and as you guys do too. So yeah, I agree. Gotten anything to chime in there, boss?
I was just going to ask. So you were in Detroit for a while, and then you came back to Lafayette due to the family business. Was there any other point in time where you contemplated leaving Lafayette, or what kept you here, rooted here?
I went to college in Bloomington, and I knew I never even thought about getting back in real estate. I really wanted to do something corporate. I wanted to move to a bigger city. And I never would have guessed the summer before I graduated that I'd be in Detroit. But I got the offers I had that I thought looked the best were in that city. And you know, Detroit has no PR department. And rightfully so. They have a lot of problems. They have had bad government for a long time, not necessarily right now. But it is a town that's really proud of itself and don't really care a lot about what other people see. And I was there when the Tigers won the World Series. So that was cool. Kind of fun. I'd never been in a city, you know, they had professional sports and things like that. So it was cool to be a part of that.
I've heard, I know, I'll roll back a little bit. I noticed you avoid the name of the school, just went to school in Bloomington as we sit here in Boilermaker country.
How about if I say I went to the remedial school in Bloomington?
That's a good way to put it.
IU has a really good real estate department.
Okay.
And a year into it, I realized I don't think I want to do real estate. So I flipped over to finance, stayed there an extra summer to get the classes that I need, and ended up in banking.
Where I was going with that is, though, but the Boilermaker thing is, I have a lot of friends. I didn't go, but that went up to Detroit for, I think it was Elite 8 at that point game, and had nothing but great things to say about, like, once they were there, and it was like, they didn't know what to expect going in, but it was just, they said it was great. It was clean, it was good, it was fun, and so, yeah,
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
They're really starting over.
Yeah, I think so. So that's good. I mean, that's hard. You talk about a job that I would never want is like turning a city around does not seem like a fun job.
I wouldn't even know where to start. I guess you start by hiring good people.
Yeah.
And they've had a history of not doing that. There's been a lot of corruption in government.
Yeah, that would be something I'd never want to do, but it seems like a never-ending task. But I think from everything I heard, I think they're doing a great job. So, okay, yeah. I think we'll start to go into our main topic, but prior to our main topic, I want to talk about one little bullet point here. Everybody and their brother has heard different things on the news and different perceptions and different statements, and I'd say maybe 10% of them are accurate, but that's beside the point. But in your opinion, prior to this big announcement and this settlement and these changes, what was the next biggest, most significant change that you've seen in real estate in your career?
It'd be interesting if you asked me that question at different times. And I would start out by saying switching from sub-agency to buyer agent seemed like a radical change. I
Okay.
cannot imagine going back to that, and most people listening don't even know what I'm talking about. And then we ran into radon. Oh my gosh, this is going to end real estate. And then high tension lines, and then more recently mold and lead-based paint. And you know, we have survived, and our housing industry has gotten better because we began to identify those things. But none of those really have to do with the structure of the way we buy and sell real estate. You know, it's still based on customer service, honesty, loyalty to your client, taking care of the cooperating broker, and frankly, at times not giving up.
Yeah. The reason I asked that question the thought behind the question is, you know, before we get into this next discussion is, you know, I've only been in the game for a minimal amount of time, we'll say, but the real estate's seen a lot of change, and we always adapt and we always push through, and so whatever the perception is, we will go on and we'll continue, and the sky's not falling. I think I've heard that from a couple different people at this point, but like, I don't know. So the industry has seen a lot of change already, and this is just one more thing.
Let me ask you the same question.
I haven't seen that much change. Like, this would be the most drastic. I mean, I'm roughly like 11 and a half, 12 years into my career. I did grow up around it a little bit, but yeah, I will say, I mean, e-signature was the biggest change for me, which was a game changer, and I was all about. But like, I mean, that just streamlined things. I think, you know, in my short dozen years here or so, I would say that the biggest change for us is learning to adapt with social media, and that you could literally, and I would say when you started, it was, you know, you were touring houses on groups and going around and looking at things as you're going to hit the market, and now we might sell a house just from video or photos, and so learning that game, and which wasn't the game when I started. It wasn't, you weren't doing that when I started. Everybody was taking their own. When I started 12 years ago, everybody was pretty much taking their own photos, with maybe except with maybe a luxury listing of some sort, but for the most part, it was a DIYer's world. You were doing it yourself, and that's changed. I mean, social media in itself, yeah, as the cell phone adapted, it's just changed the game completely. And I'd say that's the biggest change, but I think that my generation's been well at adapting that change. So
Go back a few years before that. We used to market a piece of property in a local private publication called Homes and Lifestyles.
Sure.
Black and white. We had the opportunity to put in one black and white photograph, and that was it. And so we did tour property. We needed to see what it looked like. We did more broker open houses, things like that. You know, now you can put in several dozen photographs, and it's hard to take several dozen photographs if you aren't good at it. So we're relying now on more professionals. Video is tremendous.
Sorry to change that game on you
yeah,
guys.
but I mean, think of the time it saves us.
yeah,
So,
it does.
And then a radical change is we went ahead and bit the bullet and paid the extra money to have Homes and Lifestyles in full color.
Now, I remember back before I even purchased my first home, going to like Payless and picking up one of those home
me too.
magazines
Me too.
and
I
looking
looked
through
through
them.
'em.
Yeah, we had some of our busiest, we call it opportunity times, when you have unsolicited phone calls come in, and it would always be either after the Sunday newspaper or when the new issue of Homes and Lifestyles came out, which was every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. Okay. I mean, that publication still went on up until a couple years ago. It just dwindled, and is it still? I don't think it's out at all anymore. Is it?
I don't stop at that rack at the grocery store. And
Yeah, I gotta go get some fireworks when I leave, so I'll let you guys know if they're still there.
Pick up a copy for me.
I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, that was a change that obviously disrupted that private practice for sure.
And we have a fun competitor, Kathy Russell, and now her son and daughter, and they had the courage. They're the first ones to say, because it went from biweekly to monthly, which I was in favor, and they just said we aren't going to do it anymore. And they were trailblazers. They found other ways to market their properties. And when you think of if it comes out once a month and it's a 2-week lead time, you could have a new listing, and it would be 6 weeks before it was in a publication.
and it'd be gone. in
And
today's world.
now our sellers want it uploaded before we're back to the office. And we can do it, and we can do it.
And they're texting us when it's not there.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's been a game changer for sure. But I think that overall, almost everyone's adapted at this point, but it's been good. So I will say, I think I was trying to think of other changes. One thing that I saw, like when I first started, and they were around, and if there was a few agents that used them, but not very many people did, because most people were using the state forms at that point. But every once in a while, when I first started, you'd see a carbon copy, and I thought that was so weird. Like, I'd be like, why are you using these?
Well, and this a little bit predates me, but think about the closing statement. It was done with carbon paper, and if there was a mistake or something that was renegotiated, you had to kind of wonder, are we willing to sit here for an hour and a half for the new documents to be prepared? Which was kind of an interesting negotiating tool if it's over, $50 or something.
Sure.
No,
Yeah.
let it go.
Let's close it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, just a few changes. Okay. So as we move on to our main topic here, which is going to talk about buyer-broker exclusive agreements, which came into state law yesterday. They've given us a little bit more time on that than yesterday, but officially required yesterday. We'll just start with general thoughts.
Well, it was a stunning piece of information, and I'm thankful our state association got ahead of it and said, let's get Indiana in place with buyer agency. And this, and I really mean this, we're going to look back on life without buyer, broker, exclusive contracts, wondering how did we do it? And we're really just out there flying. And, we deal with good people, and 90% of the time that loyalty and trust continues if we deliver good service. But there were those 10% where we were just left naked.
They're shopping with 10 people at the same time.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so I'm not saying that won't happen, but if it happens, everybody knows about it, and then we can decide if we want to continue. It's a piece of disclosure for the buyer that's critically important. They better understand what our duties are to them, and to an extent what our expectations are. And then it's allowed us a vehicle to talk a little bit begin the conversation about buyer, broker, professional fees, which we often call a commission.
I think, all that leads into defining your value. And this is, like you said, buyer broker compensation or commission or whatever you want to call it. This is the first document where we're really defining our value. And, on my bullet point notes here, I put legally. We're not forcing anyone to sign it. We're not forcing anything to happen. Everything's negotiable. But, we're sitting down and we're having that conversation up front and saying, look, this is, we're putting time, effort into you, and we really need to show you our value, and this is what we believe we're worth. And maybe that's negotiated and talked about. I encourage it to be negotiated and talked about, but it's the first conversation of that.
And we are very accustomed to doing that with sellers, and so there's no reason we can't pump the brakes a little bit and have those conversations with a buyer. And what I like about the contract, it gives us the flexibility to define the scope. So, Josh, let's say you called in on one of my listings, want to see it with your wife and family. I talked to you about this document, exclusive commitment to me. You don't even know me.
Yeah, it's hard.
So I can say, well, first of all, the state law doesn't allow me to show this and that, and candidly, I'm not willing to put my license at risk. But let's set some parameters that make you comfortable. How about if we make it just for this property, and we will make it 10 days. And, if the buyer is uncomfortable with that, then that's kind of a signal that maybe we aren't the best
right
buyer, and perhaps they should give a call to one of my better professionals. And the neat thing about the law is that it covers all licensees.
I agree.
It's not an office policy. I think both of our companies would adopt it as an office policy.
Yeah.
They can't go to another broker who won't require them to do it.
Yeah, I agree. It's just it's across the board. Everyone's got to do it, and I'll be anxious to see how that plays into the commercial world. But it is across the board. I think that'll be a different, it's a full conversation for another day probably, but like I think the rules have been a lot more, I won't say, I mean, I'll guess I'll just say it, a little more relaxed in that world, but this is across the board. If you have a license, you got to do this. It's state law. It's not mandated by a board. It's the law.
And we can learn from the commercial guys and ladies because they're accustomed to discussing professional fees at the beginning of a transaction. It's not automatic that the seller pays them.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're going to say, calm down. This is going to be okay, but you better learn some scripts.
Yeah, I agree. They have that conversation up front. They are telling you, you know, we might run into a situation where a property is only going to pay the listing agent, and then but the difference is they don't get it in writing. Like
Right.
typically, it's just it's a you and me handshake, and we're having a deal. And this is it's a little different. And I don't know. I do love the fact that you brought up that, you know, we can set the parameters to whatever the client's comfortable with, and that's a big deal. And whether it's, you know, you said 10 days, maybe it's like they're not willing to commit until after they meet you and talk to you, and but they really want to see this one property, so we get maybe it's just 24 hours.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to agree to meet you at this one property. I'm going to show it to you, but you have to sign we got to get a 24-hour agreement in place.
That seems pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
If I can't commit to something for 24 hours, I probably have some bigger problems.
I agree. Yeah.
than that.
You know, and ideally, you know, I've told my agents that if you do a 24-hour or 48-hour, ideally you're converting that client and you're having the conversation, and maybe you're not. Maybe it's not a good fit. Maybe you meet and you're like, no, but in most of the time you're having the conversation and you're getting a longer one in place. But agreeing to show one property for like a 1 day or 2 day agreement, I think is perfectly fine.
You know, if you liken it to dating, which I am no pro, but generally speaking, when you ask someone out for a date, it's one date, it's not five.
That's
If you go on 5 dates with me.
You need to make a commitment now.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I go to St. John's and they've got a lovely sanctuary for weddings. No. The lady who signed up for that is nuts or desperate.
Yeah.
So I mean, it'll work.
I think it'll work. I think that, you know, we've got work ahead of us, and I think there'll probably be some learning curves that we aren't anticipating yet. I don't know what those are, but I'm sure they'll exist. But the form itself is pretty good. I think it's been thought through quite a bit. Yeah, and you mentioned adopting it in our office policy. We're talking to an attorney right now about if can we take the state provided form and our office policy and turn it into one so we can get it all at the same time. And the answer is yes. It's just about if I want to pay to have it done or not.
Yeah.
And but it's I think that's ultimately. I think that I don't know. I probably want to wait the year out and see if they tweak it at all or not, and kind of go from there. But I think ultimately that's the route we'll go. Instead of having an office policy and a buyer broker agreement for buyers, we'll have one document, and that'll be how we do it. I don't know how everyone else will do it, and that's up to them. But yeah.
We're gonna start out with the state document, the state recommended office policy, because there's nothing in it that is inappropriate. But then, like you said, we're gonna learn a lot in the next 6 months, and then realize we need to make some additions to it.
Yeah, we use our own in-house office policy, but we are using the state buyer broker exclusive agreement right now. But yeah, I just ultimately I think some of it's repetitive. So I think if we could get to one document, I don't know. We'll see.
Have there been other states that have been doing it this way for a while before Indiana?
My understanding is that many communities have been using buyer agency agreements for a long time, but not to be in compliance with the state law. And, you know, kind of shame on us. We as an industry in Lafayette, without colluding, it would have been probably valuable if we had a trailblazer.
Yeah.
Went out there and got it started. But, you know, we are where we are, and we're in it. I mean this in a good way, but we're all in the same boat right now. And when you're in a boat, you begin talking to people that you didn't know before.
Yeah, and you learn things from everybody, and you pick minds, and you figure it out. And you know, this whole thing, you know, started with the general topic of cooperation. I'll say that, but cooperation is so good in this community, and you get to learn things, and I've had the opportunity to pick so many different people's brains and learn from people, and that's cooperation to me. And it's what makes the world go around, and especially in this business.
Life would be kind of flat
Yeah.
if you lived with people that weren't cooperative.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're called friends.
Yeah.
So without friends.
I love that this community is so willing to learn from each other and talk about things. And for the most part, I mean, there's always outliers, but like we get along, and that's good. And you can disagree on a lot of things and still get along. And I think a lot more people need to learn to do that. But whatever.
And it's interesting, Josh, because sometimes we are given the duty as an agent for either party where we have to deliver news or a decision on the part of our client that we do not think is a good decision.
Sure.
But I sometimes use the script, Josh. My job is to call you and tell you something that is not going to be easy for you to hear.
Yeah. And you may be upset about it, but here we are.
So the signal is don't take it out on me without betraying my client.
Yeah, because I'm required to do this. I have to protect my client's interests. They're asking me to do it, and I'm going to do it. And sometimes it's tough, and that all boils down to the cooperation and the relationships. And we're blessed to have great relationships in this community for the most part. And I think everyone understands that situation you just said. With that said, there's times where people blow up, and you let them blow up, and then maybe wait 12 hours and call back.
And when those things happen, it kind of reminds me that if we relied on the clients to deal with some of these issues that are often emotional,
Yeah.
because as a seller, you can take it kind of personally that I've been accused of this deficiency, and I don't know that buyers and sellers without the lubricant of brokers would be able to have those conversations and then continue talking to one another.
Sure. Yeah, because your heart's in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I have one other bullet point here on our thing about protecting commissions, and that this document protects our commission, and it boils back to that first thing where we're defining our value, and we're having the upfront conversation about our worth, and there is a cost to us to do this for you, and there's a time commitment, there's a loyalty commitment, there's several other things that we're doing in the background every day for you or for a client, and now we're protecting our commission or our right to be compensated for that time, and which is good in my opinion.
I'm having some work done in my bathroom, and the contractor came back with a proposal. So before he buys the first cabinet, he wants to make sure I'm all in, and I accepted it.
Sure.
We didn't, and we run into these problems with builders. The problems are when they weren't doing written change orders and things like that, and then the number comes up at the end, and that's kind of how we've been operating. So this will be good.
Yeah, I agree. Would you have something you looked like you were going to say something?
It's kind of beyond me.
Oh, okay.
No. I was going to mention when I first purchased my home, my first home, I think all of this was just a unspoken agreement that we had with our buyer's agent that, okay, we're not paying you, but you're getting paid out of the commission of our purchase. So, and we're not going to cutthroat you and go find a different agent. All that was just kind of unspoken.
Handshake deals.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know. This document, it protects us, it defines us, and overall, I think is going to be a good thing. And I agree. You said it earlier. A year from now, we'll look back and be like, "This was easy. This was an easy change." Maybe not easy. That might be the wrong word, but this is makes sense. I think that's probably better than easy. This decision made sense and has worked out well. I hope, anyways.
And we wouldn't want to go backwards.
Correct. Yeah, because right now, maybe last month even, but especially like 6 months ago, a lot of agents were just, willy-nilly, like their phone rang about a listing. They wanted to go see it. They met them and boom, 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 boom. Mm-hmm. And you're supposed to have the office policy before you're even showing them things, but I would venture to guess that, and I just don't want to know a lot about the. I would venture to guess that that didn't always happen before you walked in and showed a property. And I'm not saying it did or didn't, but I would say if you're in your car and someone calls and they want to see this house and they want to see it in 15 minutes, it's empty and they're ready to go and they're pre-approved, and I'm guessing you just went and showed the house, and that can't happen now. But
Right, and then think of all the security issues.
Yeah.
You know, going into a vacant house with someone you
That
don't
you've
know,
never met.
never, and don't have their name because we've done no documentation.
yeah, so I'm not saying it should have happened that way, but I'd be willing to bet that it did in this community and every other community for that instance. But
If we had that bet, I would want to wager on the same side as you.
So yeah, okay. Moving on a little bit, you know, all of this stemmed from one other subject, and the subject was the lawsuit. And I'm not really going to get into the lawsuit as much in this podcast. We can touch on it if you'd like, but you know, in August, kind of hand in hand with these buyer broker agency agreements, we're going to switch gears and have no advertised commissions. But that doesn't mean, for a buyer broker, that doesn't mean that those don't exist. It just means that they're not advertised anymore. And what's your general thoughts on that?
Well, to start out with, the method and the amount of money being paid to the buyer agent through the transaction, but from the seller,
Sure.
was not really discussed beyond the dining room table of the listing broker and the seller. And I could see why the seller felt they did not have a lot of opportunity to negotiate that buyer agency number.
It's a touchy subject.
It's a
I know.
touchy, and candidly, you know, the way our MLS policy was set up, the field did not allow for a zero. So that does feel like there's a little bit of constraint of trade going on.
Sure.
Shame on us. I think we should have loosened that a long time ago. But it does now give the seller the opportunity to say, you know, I'll pay for my side, but I really want the other side of the transaction to pay their commission. And we're fully set up for that. We will be fully set up in August for that to happen.
Right.
And then it will be on.
It can be zero now, just for the.
Yeah, it
just
can
for
be
the
zero
record.
now. That software change was made. But so the buyer agent, the buyer agency is left to lean on the buyer for compensation, and that's spelled out very clearly in the agency agreement. I think we have two things we're going to have to learn how to do. One is the way the system was set up is the offer of the buyer agency offer was a unilateral offer of cooperation. So there was no picking who gets it and who doesn't. So we're going to have to just be really careful that we don't allow there to be any perception of fair housing issues or DEI issues as that
Agreed.
buyer agency is delivered. Second, our code of ethics have said that buyer agents cannot discriminate on the property that we show to a buyer based on what the compensation is going to be. And that's well and good. Nowadays, if the number is zero, then we have an opportunity to say to the buyer, this is one of the instances where our compensation that we've agreed to is going to come from your side of the transaction. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, and that needs to be an upfront conversation before you even walk in the house.
Yeah, and
probably.
they may say, no, we can't afford this house
Yeah.
if that's going to be the case. No problem. I just wanted to find out. So I think that's a positive. The negative is with first-time home buyers, and all three of us have been first-time home buyers. And I'd be willing to bet that after that closing, we had only a few nickels left in our pocket.
Yeah.
So
it was-
there is no way I would have had the money to pay a buyer's agent. We're going to need to find a way to work around that. And some of it's going to be coaching to the seller that if you really want to have broad showings, you may need to give the buyer some assistance by funding the commission. But it's again, their
We're willing to
decision.
negotiate it
We're
at
willing,
least.
willing to negotiate it, and we have stuff in place for that. So, and then the VA discourages would be a light way of saying discourages the veteran from paying that fee and they're in the process of trying to find a workaround for that.
Yeah, and then I mean, I've read a couple articles on that. They're going to temporarily suspend that rule in August, so to allow that program to keep going, because it could still keep going either way, but we would have to have the conversation of, you know, when they came into a house that wasn't willing to pay a buyer broker, and that they could do that house wouldn't be able to be funded by that program, basically, or represented by us. So,
And not to be preachy, but that was not the spirit of why the GI Bill and VA loans were established, to give a pat in the back and lifetime thank you to those who served, which I didn't.
I did not either. My dad did, but I did not, and more gratitude to everyone that served all the time. So, but yeah, I think that temporary suspension for them to figure out what they're going to do and how to move forward correctly is the right move. No fast decisions. Just we're just going to suspend the rule. I think that's right, and good for them, because I won't say that government gets it right every time first try.
And the good news is we don't have to figure it out.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a different committee.
Yeah. So that's good. I think that having those conversations about that buyer broker agreement and up front, and this person's offering zero. Now, I will say, even if, in my opinion, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a real estate I'm a contract expert or anything like that, but in my opinion, you know, if they're offering zero, the seller, the buyer could still, if they adamantly want to write it, and that's what they tell us to do, and they want to try to negotiate, they still can. It can be negotiated in the contract. So just because it's advertised at that, and if the buyer wants to do it, we can negotiate it or try to. Doesn't mean the seller has to say yes either. It just means that we presented it like they asked.
An analogy would be we have a lot of buyers who don't pay full price.
Yeah.
Even though the seller said this is what it's going to take. And we write those offers up. And
Every
find a way
day,
to
right?
negotiate. Yeah, so I kind of view that decision, no, we're not going to pay, as the beginning, can be the beginning of a negotiation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, sellers say all the time, I'm not taking less than this exact line. And then an offer comes in for $2,000 less, and they're like, oh, yeah, I'll take that. So, I mean, everything's negotiable. I think that's the general meaning behind everything. So, which is good. Moving forward with that, we talked about that a lot already in the conversation, but moving forward, you talk about a year from now. I think a year from now, it's going to be the same thing as the buyer broker. We're going to be like, okay, this works. This is fine. Sky's not falling. Everything's good. Real estate continued. I think that the majority of transactions will still offer compensation. Again, that's compensation of some sort to a buyer broker, and that's just an opinion. That's Josh Shives' opinion. That's not anything else out there, but I think that that's good for business. I think sellers know that that's good for business, and as long as we teach the value of the buyer broker and we continue to teach the value of the buyer broker, I think that real estate as we know it will still continue for the most part.
And what's kind of good news is there's reason to believe the economy is going to improve.
Yeah.
So, we're not going to have those issues hopefully a year from now, that we're kind of fighting right now.
Yeah, I think so. I think that everyone that's paid a lot more money than me projects that. I think what you're hinting at is rates, and I'll say it, but again, opinions, no facts, but there's a lot of people that are paid a lot more money than me that predict that we'll see rates go down. Will they go down to a couple years ago? Absolutely not. But will they trickle down a little bit? I think so. And that'll be good for everyone, I think. So, for the most part, maybe not for the Fed, I guess. Maybe not as good for them. But
Yeah. They do their own math.
They do their own math. So, okay. Just as a final topic here, I would love to hear the funniest real estate story you have from your career.
Okay, Josh gave me a head start on this one, and this one comes to my mind. We were the listing agent for a piece of property in Tippecanoe County. We had a cash buyer that I think we also represented, and it was closed by an out-of-town title company. So we had a mobile closer come into our office.
Sure.
And got to the end of the transaction, which with a cash deal doesn't take a long time. And the closing agent said, okay, now's the time to provide that cashier's check. And the buyer said, and my father was in the room, have you received a Federal Express package for me? Well, you go out and check.
Sure.
We had not. And we asked the typical questions, where is it coming from? Is it coming from a bank? And said, no, God told me he would provide the money. So, my spiritual life means something to me, but I've never been spoken to that way.
It's pretty direct.
Yeah.
So being good brokers, we said, well, let's wait 24 hours. And got together the next day, and the buyer said he had a vision that the white Bronco was trying to get into the corral, and there were black horses in the corral that represented the dark side of the world, and he didn't come in. And couldn't help but ask, who was the dark force? And he pointed to my dad. And it was an out-of-town seller, so we got to call the seller and say,
We're not closing.
we're not closing. And we're not closing, period. It's not being delayed.
Yeah.
So,
Wow, that's pretty tough conversation right there, right?
That was before we asked for proof of funds letters.
Sure.
And so I have this funny story to tell. When a buyer's a little bit offended by that, well, let me tell you what happened.
Yeah.
And
Totally makes sense now.
Yeah, it makes sense. Oh, okay, I get it.
When did proof of funds is something I've just been accustomed to like my whole career. When do you think that kind of shifted to where we just took your word? Hey,
Yeah.
I've got $2 million ready to go right now versus.
This was in the early 2000s that it happened.
Okay.
During the what I'll call the recession.
Okay. Yeah. That's a fun story. So I think a proof of funds are there for a reason, and you just gave us one of them.
Just because you show up in an Armani suit doesn't
Yeah.
cover you.
Yeah, that was on a credit card. Somebody else's.
Yeah. We take Amex. Well, that's a good story.
Well, wait. What's yours?
Oh man, I have to come up with a funny one.
Yeah.
I don't even know. You put me on the spot. I didn't come up with a funny story for this podcast, so I at least give you a heads up. Funny story.
I don't know if much tops Adrian's, the one she told us last time.
Yeah.
Where a deer had jumped into a property.
Yeah, that wasn't me, but
I have heard that when the deer gets inside, they just freak out.
well, I don't think it made it all the way, and it just jumped through the window, cut it. But there was, I think,
Oh, I thought the police took care of it inside.
was it inside though? She said there was blood everywhere.
Yeah,
But
I don't know if it. Yeah,
it was. So that was Adrian. I think she's here. Yeah, I don't have a funny story, man. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. I'll have to come up with it and then text it to you later because I'm not sure. I'm failing here on my own podcast.
In your next podcast, would you be saying
Yes.
we had a piece of business we didn't
I need to
finish in the
finish
last one?
this.
Yeah.
I came up with one, guys, and that
we
would
got
be
content for next time.
That would be great. So, yeah, failing. You got a funny one?
No, I mean, with me going into different areas of town and properties, kind of like you were talking about, not knowing who or what to expect when you go into a vacant property. I think the craziest one is, so before I was with Rayco, I was just an independent photographer and had this agent like, yeah, I have a property. It'll be ready to go at this time. And then day of, she's like, so the tenants will be there to help you. And that was the first indication. And it was probably an 8, maybe 900 square foot home. There were 7 people and a pit bull there to help me arrange furniture to get the best photos. So yeah, that was pretty wild.
Which might have been carrying all the furniture out to the front yard.
And in Nelson's defense here, I'm sure it still looked great.
I bet it did.
It did.
And authentic and real.
Now the blinds were a little crooked,
Oh.
but
Because of the pit bill.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll think of that. And next podcast, I'm starting with a funny real estate story.
Okay.
Maybe before we even introduce whoever the guest is, we'll just start with that as a wrap up. So
The epilogue from the last one.
there we go. Well, Charlie, we truly appreciate you coming over here and doing this with us and talking and chit chatting. And we try to keep it informal and fun, and hopefully you had a little bit of fun. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Real Estate himself, Charlie Shook, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Nelson.
Yep,
I was
absolutely.
nervous, and you made this easy.
You
Thanks a
did
lot.
great.
We try to make it easy. So, and please subscribe to our channel and listen. And we appreciate y'all out there listening. So, thank you.
Okay, have a good holiday.